am sitting alone at my kitchen table after sunset. The room is quiet. The only sound is the ticking of an old wall clock on the far wall. I can hear every second pass, slow and even, like the room itself is waiting for me to speak. Between my hands rests a torn strip of thick white vinyl. It is about 6 inches long. It is stiff, but it curls a little at the edges from age. The edges are uneven, like something ripped it apart a long time ago and never let it heal straight. The white surface has turned yellow. One corner has a stain of dirt that never washed out, no matter how many times I tried scrubbing it years ago. Across the center, only 5 red letters remain. Jesus. I have been staring at that single word for several minutes before I say anything out loud. My thumb rests over the J, feeling the slight ridge where the paint sits raised above the vinyl. I've carried this piece for years. My voice sounds strange in the empty kitchen, smaller than I expect. I think it's finally time I tell you where it came from. I don't explain any further than that. Not yet. I just keep holding it. I turn it slightly in my fingers, feeling the stiff edge press against my thumb. I close my eyes for a second. Then I start from the beginning, because there is no other way to tell this. I have thought about this moment for a long time, the moment I would finally say this out loud to someone. I always pictured myself calmer than I feel right now. My hands are not steady. The clock keeps ticking behind me, indifferent, the way it has ticked through every version of me I have ever been in this kitchen. 8 years ago, I believed I was protecting my community. I want you to understand that first. I did not think of myself as an angry man. I thought of myself as a defender. Every morning began with prayer. I would kneel, I would speak the words I had known since I was a boy, and I would ask God to use me that day. I meant it every single time. That part still matters to me, even now, even knowing everything I know. By afternoon, I was usually meeting with other activists like me. We would sit in someone's living room or in the back of a coffee shop, and we would watch videos of debates. Men arguing about faith, about scripture, about who was right and who was wrong. We studied the arguments people used against the gospel. We memorized them, we practiced saying them out loud until they came easy, until the words no longer felt like words and just felt like breathing. Whenever a church in our city planned an outreach event, somebody in our group always heard about it first. Word traveled fast between us. A flyer posted online, a banner going up outside a building, a date and a time, sometimes just a photo someone snapped from a car window, sent into our chat with 3 or 4 exclamation points. We believed these events were dangerous, not dangerous like a fire or a flood. Dangerous like a slow poison, something you don't feel until it's already inside you. We believed public Christian messages could confuse Muslim families, especially the ones with young children who did not yet understand their own faith well enough to resist an idea placed gently in front of them. Stopping these events felt like a duty, not a hobby, a duty, the same as fasting or giving charity, something owed to God. We had a leader in our group, an older man everyone deferred to, who used to say that silence in the face of falsehood was its own kind of sin. I believed him completely. I would repeat his words to myself before every confrontation, like a small prayer of my own, until my nerves settled into something that felt like purpose instead of fear. And the more confrontations I joined, the more respected I became inside our group. People started to know my name before I said it. They called me fearless. They said I did not flinch, not even when a church volunteer looked me straight in the eye. My followers online increased every month. Videos of my speeches got shared from one phone to another, one group to another. People I had never met would stop me on the street and tell me they had seen me speak. They would shake my hand like I had done something important. I would smile and say very little, because I had learned that silence made people admire me even more. Every compliment sank a little deeper into me. It convinced me, piece by piece, that I was doing God's work, that this anger inside me was holy anger, that the shaking in my hands before a confrontation was not nerves, but righteousness burning its way out of me. I never once thought I was hurting anyone. I thought I was defending the truth. At night, before I fell asleep, I would run through the day's confrontation in my head, over and over, like replaying a highlight from a game. I would picture the exact moment someone's face changed when I spoke, the way their eyes would drop or their jaw would tighten. I told myself that reaction meant they were shaken by the truth. Looking back now, I think it just meant they were afraid of a stranger shouting at them in the street. I remember my mother asking me once, quietly over dinner, why I always came home so worked up. I told her I was doing God's work. She did not argue with me. She just looked at me for a long moment, the way a mother looks at a son she does not fully recognize anymore, and then she went back to eating. I did not think about that look again for years, but it stayed somewhere in me, waiting. Back then, I could not have told you the last time I sat still without planning something. Every free hour got filled with a meeting, a video, a plan for the next event. I told myself this was devotion. Looking back, I think some of it was simply the feeling of being needed, of walking into a room and having people turn toward me. I had never felt that before I found this group, and I did not want to lose it. One Saturday morning, a church across town prepared for a free medical mission. I remember the smell of the parking lot before I even got close. Fried food from a small stand near the entrance, sunscreen on warm skin, cut grass, still wet from someone mowing it that morning, sticking to the bottom of my shoes. Children laughed somewhere near the entrance. I could hear a jump rope slapping the pavement, over and over, and a group of kids counting out loud together, their voices tangled and overlapping. Volunteers in matching blue shirts carried folding tables from a van and set them up in rows, the metal legs scraping against the pavement. Families gathered near the gate, some holding babies, some just standing in small clusters, waiting for the doors to open, shielding their eyes from the morning sun. Across the front gate hung a large white banner. It stretched almost the whole width of the entrance. Bold red letters were printed across it. Hope has a name, Jesus. I remember standing there for a moment, just looking at it. The wind caught the bottom edge and lifted it slightly, then let it fall again. I remember thinking how boldly they displayed it. Not hidden inside a building. Not printed small on a pamphlet somebody might throw away without reading. Out in the open, where every car driving past could read it, where every child walking by could ask their parent what it meant. To me, that banner represented everything I had come to oppose. It felt like a challenge. Like someone had planted a flag on ground I believed belonged to us, on a street I had walked down my whole life. I noticed it. That was all. At least, that is what I told myself at the time. I walked straight toward the volunteers, setting up the tables. My shoes hit the pavement harder than they need to. I can feel my own heartbeat starting to climb before I even open my mouth. My hands are already curling into loose fists at my sides. I am wearing a plain gray shirt that day, the sleeves pushed up past my elbows, because I had learned that rolled sleeves made me look like a man who meant business. I had practiced this walk before, in front of a mirror, though I would never have admitted that to anyone. I accused them of using free food and medicine to convert Muslims. My voice is loud enough that people nearby stop what they are doing and turn to look. I can feel their eyes on me. It makes my chest tighten, but not with fear, with something closer to pride. People begin watching. A small crowd gathers at a distance, phones already coming up out of pockets, screens catching the morning light. The volunteers remain calm. That calmness bothers me more than if they had yelled back. An older man in a blue shirt just nods slowly and says he understands I am upset and that everyone is welcome to eat regardless of what they believe. His voice does not rise even a little. I remember hating how steady he sounded, how his hands never stopped folding the tablecloth in front of him even while I shouted at him. A woman near the table stops handing out water bottles. She just watches me, her arms wrapped loosely around her own waist, her face unreadable. I decide her silence means she has nothing to say for herself. I tell myself that. I need to tell myself that. Behind her, a young girl peeks out from behind a folding chair, one small hand gripping the metal leg, watching the whole scene unfold with wide, careful eyes. I notice her for only a second before looking away, back toward the man I am supposed to be confronting. I do not let myself look at her again. I move along the fence line where smaller posters have been taped up, announcing the free clinic times. I rip them down one at a time, my fingers finding the corners and tearing without hesitation. The tape pulls thin strips of paint off the fence with it. Several posters fall into puddles left over from the sprinklers that morning. The ink starts to bleed and smear almost right away, turning the black letters into gray smudges that spread outward like something bruising. Nobody argues with me while I do it. Nobody tries to stop me. That silence should have felt like a warning. Instead, it felt like permission. The large church banner remains hanging above us the entire time. Its red letters move gently in the wind, almost lazy, like it does not even notice what I am doing beneath it. I leave that day feeling satisfied. My chest is still tight, but in a different way now. A way that feels like winning. I believe we sent a message. I do not think about the children who watched me tear paper out of the ground with my hands. I do not think about it at all. Not that day, not for a long time after. On the drive home, I roll the window down and let the wind hit my face. My friend in the passenger seat keeps replaying the video he recorded on his phone, laughing at the parts where my voice cracked with anger. I laugh along with him, though something small and quiet in the back of my mind keeps replaying the older man's calm face instead, the way he never once raised his voice at me. I push that thought away before it can finish forming. I turn the radio up louder instead. That night I lie in bed staring at the ceiling, and for just a moment, I picture the wet posters lying face down in the puddles by the fence, the ink bleeding into the water like something dying slowly. I tell myself it does not matter. Paper is only paper. I fall asleep before I can think about it any longer than that. A month later, the church hosts another community event. I hear about it 2 days early this time, through a message in our group chat. Free groceries, free clothes for children starting school. I decide this one needs a bigger response. This time I bring several fellow activists with me. We meet a few blocks away first, so we can walk in together. I remember one of them laughing nervously in the car, checking his phone camera before we even got out, angling it toward his own face, and then away again. I put on the same gray shirt I had worn before. It felt like armor by then, though I never would have used that word out loud. I remember tying my shoes tighter than usual that morning, the laces cutting slightly into the tops of my feet, like even my body was bracing itself for what was coming. The sun was already hot by the time we arrived, and I remember sweat gathering at the back of my neck under my collar. My mouth felt dry, the kind of dry that comes before speaking in front of a crowd, though I told myself it was just the heat. Phones begin recording before we even arrive at the gate. I can see people already filming from their car windows as we walk past. Some of them our own people, some of them strangers who had heard we might show up. I point toward the large banner hanging above the entrance, the same one from before. Hope has a name, Jesus. Someone had repaired the small tears along the bottom edge since the last time I saw it, stitched with white thread that did not quite match the fabric, uneven and hand-done, the kind of stitching that comes from someone who cares more about the mending than the appearance of it. Without hesitation, I grab one corner of the banner and pull. The vinyl is thicker than I expect. It resists for a second, stiff in my hands, cool to the touch even in the warm morning air. I can feel the grain of the fabric under my fingers, rougher than I imagined it would be. Another man from my group grabs the opposite corner. Together we pull in different directions. I plant my feet the way I had seen wrestlers do it, leaning my whole weight backward. My arms burn almost immediately from the strain, the muscles across my shoulders pulling tight, and my hands start to ache where the stiff edge of the vinyl digs into my palms. The fabric stretches. I can hear it groan, almost like something alive trying to hold itself together, a low straining sound underneath the wind and the crowd noise. Then it rips violently down the middle. The sound is louder than I expect, sharp and sudden, like a gunshot compared to the quiet morning around us. It seems to echo off the church wall and come back at me. The crowd gasps. I hear a woman somewhere behind me cover her mouth with her hand, a small muffled sound escaping through her fingers. Some of my friends cheer. One of them slaps me on the back hard enough that I stumble half a step forward. Someone shouts, "That's what happens to lies." I raise my half of the torn banner above my head like a trophy. My arm is shaking, but I tell myself it is adrenaline, not anything else. My heart is pounding so hard I can feel it in my ears. Everyone in our group applauds. A few of the church volunteers just stand there, staring at the torn fabric on the ground, not saying a word. One young volunteer, a boy maybe 16 years old, looks like he might cry, and quickly turns his face away so no one will see. As we leave, I sling my backpack over one shoulder without looking. I do not notice that one torn strip of vinyl has caught inside the zipper, pinched between the metal teeth. I never notice it at all. I walk away from that church feeling like I had just won something important, my chest still puffed out with pride, and I carry a piece of it home with me without knowing. We stop at a small restaurant on the way home to celebrate. My friends order food and talk over each other, replaying the tear again and again on someone's phone, zooming in on the exact frame where the fabric splits apart. Someone says my name should be attached to this video, that I earned it. I remember smiling and saying I did not care about credit, though I did care. I cared more than I wanted to admit. I remember too the boy in the blue volunteer shirt, the one who turned his face away so no one would see him upset. I do not mention him to my friends. I do not mention him because saying it out loud would have meant admitting I saw it happen, and seeing it happen would have meant something I was not ready to let it mean. The torn banner stays hidden inside my backpack for weeks. I never opened that front pocket. I have no reason to. Weeks later, I interrupt another Christian outreach event across the city. This one is smaller, just a folding table outside a community center, with a few volunteers handing out warm meals to anyone who walks up. Steam rises off the paper bowls in the cool afternoon air. This time I bring a megaphone. I shout through it, my voice bouncing off the brick wall of the building beside us, doubled and distorted, sharp enough that I see people flinch from a block away. I mock the volunteers, one by one. I point at an older woman ladling soup into paper bowls and I say things about her faith that I will not repeat to you now, because saying them again would only make the wound deeper than it already is. I remember the exact way my mouth felt as I spoke, dry and stretched, the megaphone pressed too hard against my lips. I remember thinking, even in that moment, that my own voice sounded strange to me, warped and metallic through the plastic cone, like it belonged to someone else. Several elderly women quietly continue serving meals while I shout. Their hands do not stop moving. One of them looks down at the table the entire time, her fingers trembling slightly as she stacks paper bowls into a tighter and tighter pile, like she is trying to disappear into the work in front of her. Children stop smiling. I remember that clearly, even now. A small boy standing near his mother, holding a paper bowl of soup with both hands, staring up at me with an expression I did not understand at the time. Not anger, just confusion, like he could not figure out why a grown man was yelling at people who were only trying to feed him. Steam curled up from his bowl between us while he stared, and I remember it drifting sideways in the wind, right past my face, and I did not stop talking. The megaphone grows warm in my grip the longer I hold it, the plastic slick against my palm. My throat starts to ache from shouting so long and so loud, a raw, scraping feeling that I would still notice the next morning when I tried to speak. I remember tasting metal in the back of my mouth, the way you do sometimes after running too hard, though I had not moved from that same spot the entire time. Parents leave early, pulling their children along by the hand, glancing back over their shoulders. One mother covers her daughter's ears with both hands as they walk past me, pressing the girl's head gently against her side. Again, I return home convinced we had accomplished something meaningful. I tell myself the volunteers needed to hear the truth, even if it was loud, even if children were standing right there. I remember lying in bed that night, replaying my own words in my head, feeling proud instead of ashamed. That is the part that still sits heaviest with me now. Not what I did, how good it felt while I was doing it. I remember setting the megaphone down on my kitchen counter that night, still warm from my own hand gripping it for so long. I stood there looking at it for a moment, the plastic scuffed along one edge from years of use. I thought about how easily the shouting had come out of me, how natural it felt by then, like something I no longer had to build up to. That thought did not scare me at the time. It should have. I remember too the mother covering her daughter's ears as they walked away. I did not think about her that night. I thought about her weeks later, in a moment I could not explain, staring at nothing while brushing my teeth, her face suddenly appearing behind my eyes without warning. I rinsed my mouth and told myself it meant nothing. When I empty my backpack that night, the torn piece briefly falls onto the floor. It lands near my foot, a small curled strip of white and red, barely visible in the dim light of my room. Without looking closely at it, I shove it back inside the front pocket. I do not think about where it came from. I do not think about it at all. Months later, I upload my biggest speech yet. I am standing outside another church, a bigger one this time, with a small camera crew of friends filming from different angles. I had rehearsed this one for days, writing lines on index cards, practicing my pauses in front of the bathroom mirror. I tell hundreds of viewers, staring straight into the lens, that Christianity is built on deception. I use every argument I had memorized over the years, one after another, without pausing. My voice is steady, confident. I do not stumble over a single word. I remember feeling, in that moment, like every year of studying and practicing had led exactly to this. The video spreads rapidly. Within a day, it has more views than anything I have ever posted. People congratulate me in the comments, in messages, in person when I walk through my own neighborhood. Strangers nod at me on the street like we shared something. My confidence reaches its highest point that week. I feel for the first time in my life like I am exactly who I was meant to be. I remember checking the view count so many times that day that the number stopped feeling real, just a blur of digits climbing higher every time I refreshed the screen. My phone buzzed constantly with notifications, each one a small burst of pride landing somewhere in my chest. I barely ate that day. I did not need to. The attention felt like enough on its own. Friends called just to tell me they were proud, their voices bright and excited on the other end of the line. I sat on my bed for hours that afternoon, phone in hand, soaking in every word, letting each one convince me a little further that I had finally become exactly the man I always wanted people to see. That evening, while unpacking my bag after a long day, the same torn banner falls out again. It lands on my bedroom floor, curled and quiet, the same as always, catching the edge of my desk lamplight. This time, I notice the word, Jesus. I stare at it longer than I mean to. The red letters are still bright against the yellowing white background. My hand hovers over it for a second before I pick it up. My fingers feel strange holding it, heavier than something so small should feel. I roll it up tightly and throw it into a drawer. I close the drawer harder than I need to, like I am trying to slam a door on a thought before it finishes forming. I sit on the edge of my bed afterward, my speech still open on my laptop screen, the view count climbing every few seconds. I should have felt nothing but pride looking at that number. Instead, I feel a strange unease settle into my stomach, the kind you feel after eating something that looked fine but did not sit right. I close the laptop without finishing the last few comments. I forget about it, or at least I try to. Months pass. Every time I clean my room, the torn banner somehow appears again, inside a different backpack I have not used in weeks, one I keep in the closet for trips out of town. Between old notebooks I have not opened since school, stacked on a shelf I rarely touch. Once, it falls out from between the pages of a book I do not even remember placing it inside, a book about debate tactics I had not read in over a year. Each time, my stomach tightens a little more than it did the time before. I stand there holding it, turning it over in my hands, trying to remember when I could have moved it there. I never can. I start keeping track in my head, counting the number of times it has appeared somewhere I did not put it, and by the fourth or fifth time, the counting itself starts to frighten me more than the object does. I tell myself I am simply absent-minded, that I must have moved it myself and forgotten. Nothing supernatural, just carelessness, like anyone might have with a small scrap of trash they keep forgetting to throw away. Yet something feels strange every time it happens. A small chill somewhere behind my ribs that I cannot explain and do not want to examine too closely. I find myself glancing at my own drawer some nights before I even open it, as if I am bracing for something. Eventually, I stop throwing it away. Instead, I quietly place it back inside the same drawer each time, almost like a habit I never decided to start. My hand knows exactly where it goes now, without me thinking about it. Without realizing it, I begin checking whether it's still there. Some nights, before I go to sleep, I will open that drawer just to look. I never touch it. I just look. And then I close the drawer again, and I go to bed without knowing why I needed to check. One night I ask a close friend if he thinks it's strange, an old scrap of trash following me around my own room for months. He laughs and tells me I'm working too hard, that stress does strange things to the mind, makes a person misplace things and forget doing it. I laugh along with him and change the subject, but driving home that night, I keep glancing at the passenger seat, half expecting to see a curl of white and red sitting there, even though I know exactly where I left it. One evening, I sit alone in my room and replay old videos of my protests. I do this sometimes now, watching myself from months or years ago, remembering how sure I felt in every moment, studying my own face on the screen like it belongs to a stranger. There it is, the exact moment the banner tears, my hand and another man's hand pulling in opposite directions. The sharp sound, the gasp from the crowd. I watch my own arm rise with the torn fabric, my own mouth open in a shout I can no longer hear the meaning of. I freeze the video on that single frame. That is the piece now sitting inside my drawer. I am almost certain of it. The shape matches. The faded red letters match. I press pause and stare at the screen for a long time, my own frozen face looking back at me, proud and unaware. I replay every confrontation after that, every argument I made outside every church, every event we disrupted, every poster I tore down, every megaphone speech I gave. I watch myself grow louder from one video to the next, more certain, more admired, and somehow, watching it now, it looks less like courage and more like something else I do not yet have a word for. Everything started with that banner. Not literally, maybe, but in my memory, it feels like the beginning of something that never stopped. I suddenly realize I have spent years holding a piece of the very thing I tried to destroy. It sat in my drawer the entire time, following me from bag to bag, book to book, as if it refused to be thrown away, as if it were waiting for me to finish something I did not know I had started. That thought refuses to leave me once I have it. It sits behind my eyes when I try to sleep. It sits in my chest when I am supposed to be listening to a friend talk. I catch myself staring off in the middle of conversations, and I have to ask people to repeat themselves more than once. It is not guilt, not yet. I am not ready to call it that. It is not belief either. I am certainly not ready to call it that. It is just questions. Small, quiet questions that keep circling back no matter how many times I push them away. Why does it keep appearing? Why can I not make myself throw it away for good? Why does looking at it make my chest feel tight in a way that has nothing to do with pride? I stopped watching the old videos after that night. I cannot say exactly why. Something about seeing my own face so certain, so proud, while a piece of the very banner I destroyed sat waiting in a drawer down the hall, makes my stomach turn in a way I do not have words for yet. I close my laptop and sit in the dark for a long while, listening to nothing at all. Questions I do not want. Nearly a year later, a severe storm floods parts of the city. I remember the rain coming down so hard it sounded like static on a radio, hour after hour, until the streets near the river started to rise. Water crept up over curbs, swallowing parked cars up to their tires, then their doors. The same church opens its doors as an emergency shelter. I hear about it from a neighbor, not from my old group. Instead of turning people away, they welcome everyone, Muslims, Christians, people who believe nothing at all, anyone who needs a dry floor and a warm meal that night. I secretly volunteer one evening, because they need extra hands carrying supplies up from the flooded basement. I do not tell anyone from my old group. I do not even fully understand why I go. I simply put on an old jacket, pull the hood up, and walk through the doors of the same building I once stood outside of, shouting. My hands shake a little as I reach for the door handle. Part of me expects someone to recognize me the moment I step inside, to point and say my name out loud in front of everyone. No one does. A young volunteer at the entrance just hands me a stack of folded towels and points toward the stairs leading down to the basement, and I take them without a word, grateful for the hood still covering half my face. The basement smells like wet cardboard and standing water. My shoes fill slowly with cold water as I wade through the flooded rows, carrying box after box up the narrow stairs. My back aches by the third trip. My fingers turn numb from the cold, but I keep working, because working means I do not have to think about anything else, and for once, that feels like a relief instead of a distraction. Nobody recognizes me. I carry boxes of blankets and bottled water for hours, moving quietly among strangers, listening to volunteers speak gently to frightened families in the hallway. My arms ache under the weight of the boxes, and my shoes squeak against the wet tile every time I turn a corner, but I keep working, saying almost nothing to anyone. After everyone leaves for the night, I remain alone inside the church hall. My jacket is still damp from the rain outside. My arms ache from the boxes, a dull throb settling into my shoulders. The repaired banner hangs quietly near the entrance. I had not expected to see it again. I stop mid-step when I see it, my wet shoes squeaking against the tile as I come to a halt. The original tear has been carefully stitched together, the same uneven white thread I remember from before, running down the center like a scar. Only one section is missing, a small gap in the fabric, right along the seam, shaped almost like a jagged little window with nothing on the other side of it. Exactly the shape of the piece inside my pocket. I stand there for a long moment, staring at that empty space. My hand moves toward my jacket pocket, almost on its own, without me deciding to move it. For the first time, I realize I have been carrying the missing piece all along. The church is silent. The volunteers have gone home. The only light comes from a single lamp near the front doors, casting long shadows across the empty chairs stacked along the wall. Rain taps softly against the windows, slower now than before, almost gentle, like the storm itself has grown tired. I take the torn piece from my pocket. It feels lighter than I remember, though nothing about it has changed. My fingers close around it carefully, the way you might hold something that could break. My hands begin shaking, not from cold. I know the difference. I can feel my own pulse in my fingertips, quick and uneven. A strange pressure builds behind my eyes, the kind you feel right before tears come, though nothing has happened yet to explain it. My mouth goes dry. My skin prickles along my arms, under the damp jacket sleeves, like something has brushed past me, even though the air in the hall has not moved at all. My breath catches somewhere high in my chest and refuses to go any deeper. I stand still for a moment, just breathing, just feeling my own heartbeat pound against my ribs before my legs finally carry me forward on their own. Without thinking, I walk toward the repaired banner hanging near the entrance. My footsteps sound too loud on the tile floor, echoing back at me from the empty room, each one landing heavier than I mean it to. The missing space matches perfectly. I can see it even from a few steps away. My breath catches somewhere in my throat. I press the piece against it. For one long moment, nothing happens. The room stays exactly the same. The lamp still hums, the rain still taps against the glass. I stand there with my hand pressed flat against the fabric, my heart pounding so hard I can feel it in my palm. Then the silence changes. I cannot explain it any better than that. The air feels heavier, warmer, not frightening, though my whole body has gone still, every muscle locked in place, just alive, in a way I have never felt a room feel before. The hair on my arms rises beneath my damp jacket sleeves. Every sound disappears. The rain, the hum of the lamp, even the sound of my own breathing seems to fade into something else, something I cannot name. I know someone is present. I cannot explain how I know. I simply know, the same way you know someone has walked into a room behind you even before you turn around. My whole body understands it before my mind catches up. My knees have already gone weak. I do not turn around. I do not look for a shape or a light. There is nothing to see. There is only the feeling, pressing in from every side of me at once. patient and enormous, and impossibly close. My hand is still pressed against the banner. I can feel the stitched seam under my palm, rough where the thread crosses itself again and again. I do not move. I do not breathe for what feels like a long time, though it can only have been a few seconds. My whole body waits, the way you wait in the dark for a sound to happen again after you've already heard it once. Then I hear a quiet voice, not through my ears, deep inside me. You tried to tear my name away, but I never stopped calling yours. Every argument I have ever made disappears. Every debate I memorized. Every clever point I was so proud of. Every line I had rehearsed in front of a mirror. Gone all at once, like they were never real to begin with, like they had been built out of nothing more than air. I sink to my knees, not because someone tells me to, because I no longer have the strength to stand. My legs simply give out beneath me, and I do not try to catch myself. My knees hit the hard tile floor, and I barely feel it. The pain does not register. Nothing does, except the weight pressing gently down on my chest, and the sound of my own breath finally returning, ragged and uneven. Tears fall onto the torn banner, still pressed between my hands. I do not remember deciding to cry. I simply am. My shoulders shake with it, silent at first, then not silent at all. The sound that finally comes out of me does not feel like my own voice. It feels older and younger, both at once, something that had been waiting a very long time to be let out. I press my forehead against the back of my own hands, still holding the torn piece, and I stay like that, folded over on my knees, until my breathing finally starts to slow. My knees have gone numb against the tile beneath me, but I do not move to ease them. Some part of me does not want to leave that position yet, as if standing up too soon would mean the moment was already over. The silence slowly returns, the rain against the window, the hum of the lamp, my own breath, still ragged, filling the empty hall. Nothing else happens, no more words. No light, no sign beyond the one I already received. I kneel there a long time, waiting for something more, but nothing more comes. It does not need to. I keep waiting for fear to arrive, the way I always imagined it would, if something like this ever happened to me. It does not come. What comes instead is something closer to relief, heavy and exhausted, the kind of relief you feel after finally setting down something you have carried so long you forgot it had a weight at all. But nothing inside me is the same. I remain there for nearly an hour, kneeling on that tile floor, the torn banner still in my hands. My knees ache. My jacket is still damp. The lamp near the doors keeps humming its same quiet hum. The repaired banner hangs exactly where it always had. Nothing about the church hall looks different. The chairs are still stacked the same way against the wall. The boxes I carried earlier still sit in their same rows. Yet everything feels different. My first thought is not, I have become Christian. That thought does not even arrive that night. My first thought is, I have spent years fighting someone I never truly knew. I sit with that thought until my legs are too stiff to kneel any longer. Then I stand, slowly, my knees popping in protest, and I fold the torn piece carefully and place it back inside my jacket pocket. I look at the banner one more time before I leave, at the small gap that once matched exactly the piece I now carry against my chest. I do not touch it again. The next morning, I delete every hateful video from every account I own. My hand hovers over each one before I press delete, but I press it anyway, one after another, until there is nothing left. Some of the videos have thousands of views. I do not stop for a single one of them. My finger trembles slightly over the screen each time, not from doubt, but from something closer to grief. Each video represented hours of my life, hours I once believed were the best hours I had ever spent. Watching them disappear one by one feels less like erasing a mistake and more like setting down a weight I did not know how tired I was of carrying. I leave every activist group I belong to, not publicly. I do not post an announcement. I do not explain myself to anyone. I simply stop showing up, one meeting at a time, until people stop expecting me. A few send messages asking where I've been. I do not answer them. I begin reading the gospel in secret. Just a few pages at night, with my door closed, a small lamp on my desk the only light in the room. I tell myself I am only reading to understand the name I had tried so hard to erase. I do not call it anything more than that. Not yet. Some nights I only manage a single page before I have to close the book and just sit there, staring at the wall, letting whatever I read settle into me slowly. Other nights I read until my eyes burn and the lamp is the only warm thing left in the house. I keep the book hidden under a stack of old notebooks during the day, the same shelf where the torn banner used to hide itself from me for so long. It feels strange keeping something precious in the same place I once kept something I did not understand. Years pass. My life grows quieter in ways I did not expect. Weekends I once spent organizing protests become weekends spent serving meals to anyone who is hungry, at shelters and community kitchens across the city. My hands, which once tore banners off fences, now carry trays of food to strangers instead. Some days I catch myself standing behind a folding table, and I think of the older man who once stood so calmly across from me while I shouted, and I understand him now in a way I never could before. Some former friends call me a traitor. A few say it to my face. Most simply stop calling at all. Their silence sometimes hurts worse than the words would have. Some family members stop speaking to me. That pain never fully disappears, no matter how many years pass. I still think about them some nights, and I still hope, quietly, that one day that silence will end. I remember an uncle who once bragged about my speeches to the whole family at a dinner table, telling everyone how proud he was of me. He does not call anymore. I understand why. I do not blame him for it, though some nights the missing sound of his voice on the phone feels like its own kind of ache, dull and constant, something I have simply learned to carry alongside everything else. My mother still speaks to me, though our conversations feel careful now, like both of us are walking around something neither of us wants to name out loud. I hold on to that carefulness anyway, because it is still better than silence. I still regret the fear I caused, especially the children who witnessed my anger outside those churches. I think about the small boy holding his paper bowl of soup more often than I expect to. I never learned his name. I never will, but I carry him with me anyway, the way I once carried the torn banner without knowing it. There is a woman I now serve alongside at the community kitchen, an older volunteer who reminds me a little of the man who once stood so calmly across from me while I shouted at his church. One afternoon she asks, gently, why I always seem to work harder on Saturdays than any other day. I almost tell her the truth. Instead, I just say, Saturdays feel important to me, and she nods like she already understands more than I said out loud. The torn banner stays folded inside a small wooden box beside my Bible now. Not as a trophy. I could never look at it that way again. Not as a relic either, something to be worshipped or displayed, but as a reminder. Every time I unfold it, I remember how close I came to destroying something, without realizing God was using it to reach me the entire time. Now I am back at the same kitchen table, the same torn banner resting between my hands, the same faded red letters catching the lamplight. I slowly turn the vinyl over. For years I never looked at the back of it. I never thought there was any reason to. Near the stitched hem, almost invisible beneath dirt and age, are faded blue words printed by the church. Everyone is welcome. I run my thumb across those words, slowly, feeling the small ridges where the ink sits raised against the fabric. I do not say another sentence for a long moment. I just sit there, letting the clock tick behind me, letting the weight of those 3 small words settle into my chest. The kitchen is still quiet. The lamp above the table hums faintly, the same steady hum as that night in the church hall so many years ago. I think about the man in the blue shirt from that very first morning, the one who told me everyone was welcome regardless of what they believed. I never learned his name either. I wonder sometimes if he ever knew how deeply those quiet words of his would end up settling into me, long after I had already walked away, certain I had won something that day. If you are still here with me, I want you to know something simple before I go. I did not share this story to convince you of anything. I shared it because carrying it alone for this long finally felt heavier than letting it out. If it meant something to you, there is more of my story here on this channel, waiting whenever you are ready for it. I hope you will stay. The story ends there.